So we're going to continue our discussion about special angle relationships, and you can see I've drawn a bunch of angles using my straight edge and a protractor to help me with a specific angle. You might recognize what that one might be. And we are going to use this drawing to help us identify complementary angles, supplementary angles, adjacent angles, a linear pair, or if there are many more than one, linear pairs, and vertical angles. Now you already know what complementary and supplementary angles are. As a reminder, complementary angles are two angles that add up to 90 degrees. Supplementary angles are two angles that add up to 180 degrees, and they don't have to be touching, but they can. And that again is what our adjacent angles are. So if we go over, now sometimes students want to say, oh, angle 3 is complementary. Well, remember, that's not two angles that add up to 90 degrees. Well, do 3 and 4 add up to 90 degrees? Well, 3 and nothing's going to add up to 90 because 3 is already 90. That's what this square symbol means. It means this is a 90-degree measure. We can see 5 is obtuse, so it's not that. Could it be 4 and 1? Well, we have no idea what they measure, and you're not allowed to measure unless it says you are. Don't measure. And don't guess. You're never allowed to, don't measure or guess. You're never allowed to measure or guess angles. You're allowed to say that one's acute and that one is obtuse, and since the symbol says it, it's right. Now without that symbol, if I erase that, even if it looks 90, even if you measure it to be 90, you don't get to say it's 90. You just get to say it looks like a right angle. It looks like this line is perpendicular to that line. That symbol also means perpendicular. But you can't conclude that unless it says it in the text, like it says that this angle is a right angle. If it says you can use your protractor to measure it, then you're allowed to, but you're never allowed to measure it unless it says to, and you're never allowed to guess or assume. So it's actually angles 1 and 2. And I want you to put angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. How do we know it's 1 and 2? Well, we know that this one is a straight line. They're not allowed to trick you by being like barely 1 degree off. So if it looks like a straight line, you are allowed to assume that it's a straight line. If this is a straight line and this ray coming off of it creates a 90-degree angle here, well then these two together must also be a right angle, because 180 minus 90 only leaves 90 left up. So these two angles together must make up 90 degrees. Supplementary, well, we need two angles that add up to 180. Well, you can't say 3 and 2 and 1 because that's not two angles that add up to 180. That's three angles that add up to 180. Obviously down here, this is still a straight line, and on the bottom side or on the left-hand side, there are only two angles. And you don't have to put them in order. I can say angle 5 and angle 4. Those are the supplementary angles. Now adjacent angles, we've got tons to choose from. You know, I could say angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Angle 2 and angle 3 are adjacent. Angle 3 and angle 4 are adjacent. Angle 4 and angle 5 are adjacent. And also, angle 1 and angle 5 are adjacent. Remember, adjacent just means that they share a vertex and a ray. Linear pair. Well, remember that a linear pair has two requirements. Two angles that add up to 180 degrees and share a vertex and a ray, adjacent. So there's only one set, and that's again angle 4 and angle 5. Please don't just put 4 and 5. Put angle 4 and angle 5. Now vertical angles, maybe this one is new for you. Well, vertical angles, I'm going to make a quick sketch. So I'm going to call it A, B, C, and D. Areas. I don't want to use numbers because I don't want to get it confused with over here. Well, vertical angles are the ones that are across from each other. When two lines intersect, the angles that are opposite from each other. So in this case, B and D would be vertical angles. A and C would be vertical angles. And there's something else that you need to know about vertical angles. Vertical angles are something very important. We're going to fill in that blank. Well, what do they look like? What does the measure of B's angle measure, how does that compare to D's? What do you think? And I tried to draw them pretty extreme. And how do you think the measure of angle A's compares to angle C's? Don't they look the same? They are. Our word here is congruent. Vertical angles are congruent. So let's look up in our drawing here so we can fill in this blank right here. Is 5 opposite from anything? Well, this line and this line make that line and that line. Well, there are 2 angles over here, so 5 is vertical to 2 angles. So you can't say 5 is vertical to 2 and 3. I mean, it's true, but they aren't vertical angles. We're just looking for 2 angles that are on opposite positions, right? So that takes 2 and 3 out. Oh, here it is right here, 1 and 4. Angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical angles.